My name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. We have extended the time on these shorter episodes from 5 to 6 minutes to 15 to 20 minutes for this season. This is so that these shorts can serve as introductory episodes released ahead of our weekly, longer form episodes. But don't worry, I will still let you know my observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership, particularly as we prepare for the restoration of leadership and leadership principles during the next historical high in America. Why these episodes? Well, because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 15 to 20 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book that you bought with that famous person's name as the author, but you haven't applied any of the principles from that book to your leadership practices. At least not yet. During the most recent golden era of cable and streaming television entertainment, several popular shows played with the trope, or modified the trope, of the quote-unquote witness who documents without fully understanding. The Wire, Arrested Development, and Breaking Bad were some high watermark examples of such efforts on television in the popular culture that leverage the idea that if a person observes another person's empirical actions, they may not be able to determine any great meaning from what they are observing. The idea that we cannot find meaning in another person's actions is one that was visited upon the West after the horrors of World War II. From the rape of Nanking to the trials at Nuremberg, the challenge that faced the secular West was how to call observable evil what it actually was, without an appeal to a transcendent authority whose existence all parties in the calling out may not agree on. This idea, of course, led to an increase in existential dread, the coming on of absurdity as a cope, as the kids would say these days, and finally, at the close of the 20th century, appeals to the power of, well, raw power. The person who witnesses and yet is shocked into incoherence is a problem, to be sure, but not a problem of a lack of belief in a transcendent good, but it is a problem of a lack of the language to ask the right questions, interpret assertions that may be bogus, and a lack of ability to discern and then critically think through the challenge of interpersonal horror. The writer, essayist, and journalist Joan Didion keyed into this idea almost exactly when she opened her 1961 collection of essays, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, about the baby boomers who were beginning to make their own contribution to incoherence, cultural incoherence, with the poem by William Butler Yeats, Second Coming. And I quote, "Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." Some authors who pioneered the approach to what they were witnessing with an approach of disinterest included Hunter S. Thompson, Eudora Welty, and the aforementioned Joan Didion. Mostly from the journalistic tradition, writers and essayists who spend their time documenting things they cannot understand typically tend to, historically, particularly in the 20th century, contribute cynically and ironically to the popular culture. This contribution and this approach is the reason why many of them are considered to be literary authors rather than popular authors designed for the masses. This reflects the authorial knowing, at least in the 20th century, that the masses had a certain species of moral courage that goaded them as at an individual level and at a mass level to action, and that species of moral courage would judge harshly journalistic witnessing of inaction in the face of moral evil, and would view all claims of journalistic objectivity wrapped in the frame of anthropological distance as automatically suspect. But at some point culturally and historically in America, between the fighting in the Vietnam War and the resignation of President Richard Nixon, the desire to observe but not interfere became mixed up with the desire to enforce a view of reality that was antithetical to most claims of objectivity or even distance. Authors like Didion and Thompson, along with Truman Capote, Tom Wolfe, and many others, began to realize that they could capitalize on the twin developments of cultural cynicism and cultural unraveling, along with the desire for constant titillation with sex, violence, and other behaviors, by actually writing what they were witnessing with a certain species of disinterested judgment. Now, there are limitations to anthropological distance. At a certain point, the witness must be moved to moral engagement with the things they are witnessing. Otherwise, society might as well surrender to the impersonal camera, which we have done in the last 25 years of the 21st century. No longer are the witnesses distanced from complexity. They are part and parcel of it. If you don't believe me, think about how quickly we moved culturally from Rodney King in the early 1990s being beaten on the street on film to George Floyd's death being broadcast to everyone's social media accounts globally in under an hour. We have shrunk anthropological distance to the space of a TikTok post, but our moral courage has not expanded commensurately. One other point to think about as we go into this next quarter. One of the interesting communication phenomena that has happened in our era, in the 21st century, is the rise of feminine-coded language patterns. You know what I'm talking about. Corporations, governments, public policy wonks, and others involved in the marketing of ideas, products, behaviors, and everything else to the masses now leverage the appeal of language that leads the hearer, or the witness, such as it were, into a cul-de-sac of communal meaning, collaborative outcomes, and supportive assurances. And while I have no problem in principle with feminine coded language, we must be honest about the outcomes and the challenges of such language. One of which is that it tends to hide conflict, encourage navel-gazing narcissism, and invariably fails to address and confront pathologies that erode and destroy. With such language also comes the problem of the need for sincerity to solve problems. In our cultural times, leaders need not believe in what they are selling. They need only say the words in a tone that triggers feelings in the listener that they are pretending to be sincere. In the ultimate Serpent in the Garden of Eden move, feminine-coded language supports a feminized and softened culture, while failing to engage effectively with the hard problems that witnessing moral evil with anthropological distance on our phones automatically and invariably creates. Leadership may require acknowledging what we cannot fully know, but it also requires us to state what we do know, what is objective, and what we can judge, and of course, what we can address. To do so requires a language of directness, which can sometimes lead to hurt feelings in the listener. The reason literary authors of the 20th century struggled with what they were seeing was that the transition from masculine-coded language forms to feminine-coded language forms wasn't easy, nor was it natural. And a return to such modes in our own time over the next 25 years among leaders won't be easy either. And well, that's it for me. Are you ready to elevate your leadership journey through exploring the wisdom of the ages? Subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube Music. You can also find us everywhere else podcasts are available. If you find value in our episodes, please leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. We need those reviews to grow, and it is truly the easiest way to help other leaders and lovers of literature discover this show. And thank you for your support.